the tales have given us some very, very good information. And it was more in depth than what we normally get on the show in some cases. And I thought this was one of them. One of the things that I found interesting about Hedden's, it was called Hedden's Hunt. I found it very interesting about how articles. It was the Reader's Digest 1960 June 1965 article that got Dan Blankenship, the Laginas. How many other people got pulled into this whole treasure mystery by that article in the Reader's Digest? And Hedden got pulled into this by looking at the New York Times. It was a New York Times article from 1926 called Tide Guards Oak Island Buried Gold. Is there anybody in the chat right now that actually ever saw the 1965 Reader's Digest article? I did.
Have I seen it? Kid. Yes, I've held the Reader's Digest in my hand thanks to
Did
Jeff
you?
Irving. Jeff Irving's got one.
Mr. Irving,
Ooh,
yes,
cool.
sir. Yeah, so yeah, there you go. Several people did. I remember seeing it.
But keep in mind that back in the day, that was the form of communication. There were no podcasts, there were no TV shows, there was no Discovery Channel, there was no History Channel.
Right.
You know, the way people communicated and the way people learned was they got an article in the newspaper. Times were different, standards were different, and things were well researched and published.
Yeah.
I loved reading Reader's Digest sitting in the deer blind with my dad. There was always a stack of old Reader's Digests that my grandparents kept, and my dad would put on all our deer blinds. And I would always, of course, as a kid, I would skip through to all the joke sections because I wanted to read all the funnies. Yeah, humor and uniform. That was one of the greats.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. I thought nowadays as a kid, I probably would be on my phone rather than looking through old Reader's Digests.
Yeah.
I might have come across one of my grandparents' copies and just never knew.
Yeah. So anyway, Hedden got the bug from reading that New York Times article in 1926. So he gets over to Oak Island and he ends up buying lots 15 through 20, where the money pit is on lot 18. So he ended up buying all of those lots. I think it says here, mysterious treasure pit of Nova Scotia has long defied engineers. So this kind of interesting little thing there. But he thought, his original thinking, of course, I think, was that it was Captain Kidd's treasure, right?
Yep. He read an article on Captain Kidd, and I don't know if it was at the first or after he started the search, but yeah, he was convinced it was Kidd. I think the Kidd article came later, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. I think so. Captain Kidd and his Skeleton Island.
Yeah.
Written in...
The book was 1935, the book was written.
Yeah, and that's about the time he got there. It was about 1935.
Yep.
So, everybody, and a lot of times, nobody really thought about the Templars back then, that it was a Templar treasure or it was some kind of thing like that. They thought it was a pirate treasure. There was pirate treasure on the island because, as Tom's talked about, pirates were very prevalent in that area back then, right?
Well, that was the known history, right? Those guys were in the area. That was the known history. No one had ever, as far as I know, back then, it had gone back in to say, "Oh my goodness, look at these fellows over in Europe. Could they have been the Templars, or do the work that someone like Chris or Corrigan have done, or whatever?" And say, guess who else could have been here? It just never crossed people's minds.
Exactly.
Is the skull and bones flag? Is that a Templar / Mason symbol that the pirates had adopted? I feel like I saw that, but I don't know if it's actually historic.
That's a good question for Gretchen right there.
Gretchen, I think that was a Templar thing.
I think it was.
Because now I feel like now we have a little bit more
away the evil spirits.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like a lot now we look back and we could say a lot of pirates were members of this secret society.
Yeah. Gretchen, what's your thing on the Templars go back to 1100s, right?
Yep.
On the skull and crossbones. I think Gretchen was the one that originally had, when we had, she was on the podcast and we talked about the skull and crossbones coming up. And there's a lot of, I think that because they were big on the prophet that was baptizing everybody in the Jordan.
John the Baptist with his head.
John the
So it's
Baptist.
his head cut off? Is that what it is?
I think it was supposed to be John the Baptist, a symbolization of his. Tell me if I'm wrong, Gretchen, but the first to fly the Jolly Roger was the King of Sicily, supporters of the Templars.
There you go.
Okay.
See, Gretchen, we do listen.
So there is a connection, perhaps, to the Jolly Roger. Thank you. That's what it's called.
Yeah, the Jolly Roger. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that book, I think it was in this book where they had this map. Now, there was a guy that came out this was like back in season 1 or 2 of Curse of Oak Island, that they were talking with this gentleman. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. But he came and he talked to Marty, and he was in one of the restaurants, and they were talking about that book and this particular map, and saying that this map was actually Oak Island. Now, and somebody had told me this recently, and I had not known this. Did they not originally make maps with north on the bottom? And our researchers out there, Doug is here too. Let me know if that's the case, because somebody had mentioned that, and I did not know that maps were originally made with north at the bottom, or some were. I don't know, but you see here, this one is showing north at the bottom, east to the left, and west going the other way. So if you take this and you take this particular map and you flip it over and put north at the top, it does kind of resemble Oak Island.
Yeah.
The one thing that gets me about that, though, the Nile Delta is upside down, north is in the south. Is these little markers on here talking about certain things like galleon wrecks, cocoa palms, desert?
Struck me was the thing about the palms. So if you flip that map upside down, right, you've got the palms, supposedly covering the drain tiles.
I was about to say all the coconut fibers.
Right. And some people say fibers, palms, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that struck me was the word desert. Okay. Where's the boulderless beach?
Ah, yeah, good point.
What the desert mean? I mean, desert just means basically a barren area.
Right.
Depending on whose interpretation you want to use. But the first thing I thought, desert, no big rocks, boulderless beach. Another one of these quotes. I mean, Jake Roberts, you're inside my head, man. You got me frigged up. So.
Yeah.
Does it say Death Valley where the swamp is?
Yeah, it says Death Valley right here, that's kind of where the swamp would be, or Money Pit. Actually, that's kind of where the Money Pit would be, right across there. But yeah, so
I don't know.
Yeah, Death Valley right here, mountains. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's a stretch.
Me too.
To say that's Oak Island. It is fun to speculate about it, but it does, when you flip it over and you put north at the top, it does kind of look like a crude drawing of Oak Island. I don't know, but that's what this gentleman was saying.
I'm sure we could find other islands that look similar.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I remember Marty and his partner meeting with the guy in Traverse City who brought them the map, thinking, right? Yeah, Linda, that's right. I forget that guy's name too. I can't remember his name that was meeting with him. But we never saw him ever show up again, on the island or talking with anybody. But these coordinates came up, very interesting again. So there was some talk about those coordinates. Tom, I know you watched these and researched this episode pretty thoroughly, so feel free, please, to jump in.
Oh yeah, no. The map was interesting.
Yeah,
I just, and the William Kidd thing. I mean, Kidd was around. We know what happened to him. But was that map in a book published in 1935? I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. I'm reading through my notes here I made of this. Yeah, Mardell. I've heard of places called Del Mar, but not Mardell. Thought to be Oak Island upside down. Hedden used the coordinates at the bottom, and he was using those coordinates on Oak Island. because he kind of believed that this was a map. Look at the, and I wanted to mention
The
too,
timbers.
yeah, exactly. You see how much work that and money and everything else that the Laginas have put into this. These guys, Hedden had put in a ton of money into this
Yeah.
thing back
Well,
in
you
the
see
day.
at the top of that sign there, Sprague and Henwood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were a big mining outfit out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. So that
Hire them guys.
they would have brought their mining equipment up purchased their mining equipment down there and brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
So this was not just a bunch of guys lowering a bucket down the well. Like they had some serious equipment there. These guys, that company was, and it's still in existence in some form right now. But that was a big manufacturer of mining equipment.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a bunch of guys, lowering buckets down the well on a
Yeah,
rope.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, the lumber, and I got pictures of the lumber. Look at the lumber there. It just in the construction of the head and shaft itself. That thing is solid.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
They had to bring these trees in from somewhere. You're not getting them off the island. Not that length, not that dimension.
mm-mm.
And if anybody says finding a barrel part is unique, well, look at the barrels they were using to bring up the stuff from the bottom.
Yeah, running it down there. Guys were being lowered down in with the bucket. They were riding in the bucket, riding down there to the where they were working. They were shoveling dirt and rock and everything else into that barrel, and then the barrel was coming up. They were dumping it into a train car, a little car,
little mini, like a coal mining trolley. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I got a picture of that little railway. And I was very curious about this sinkhole right here, this hole, which one of the shafts that would have been, because this is all happening in the early 1900s. But you've got all this going on over here. But just look at all that lumber that they brought for this operation.
Mhm.
That's crazy. Look at that. I mean, these beams and everything. The money
Keep
that
in
they
mind,
put
there was no road to bring that across on a truck.
There's no causeway yet.
Right? There's no causeway. So this is all brought in by boat and unloaded by hand.
Wow.
Yeah. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. This is an aerial shot. You can actually see the shadow of the airplane right there as it was flying by. But I was thinking about this little where they were filling up that mining car with the spoils, and then they were running it over and dumping it all the way down here. Okay, I'm gonna say that this is South Shore. Would you agree with that? Down here,
Yep.
that this down here is South Shore, and Smith's Cove would be over this way, somewhere over here. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Let me make this a little bigger here.
Sorry, let me see if I can.
No, it's okay. It's just on a laptop here, so you got to make everything bigger.
I'm assuming you go with the this is the money pit, obviously.
Yep.
And so is this heading down towards South Shore down here? And then Smith's Cove being back over this way? I think so.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. I was thinking about this dump area that they're dumping all these spoils.
That being the case, then the swamp would be to the left-hand side of that picture. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was thinking the swamp's over here.
Because
way.
Look at I don't think that they are paths. I think those are brooks or streams or runoff.
Yeah, these are runoffs right here.
Yeah. And maybe the swamp, top left-hand corner. I don't know. Corner of the swamp.
Right. I love this picture because there's so much to see here.
There's your stone road, your center stone road coming down the middle. Yep.
Stone Road. Remember the stone road?
That's the one they found in the swamp? Mm-hmm. That's when they had Marty up digging up with the backhoe.
Yeah. There's so much in this picture that just blows my mind. But this right here coming down in that spoils pot or pile right there. This I've got another picture right here. There's where the guys are dumping.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what. Oh, you do. Zane says he's got this overlaid. Good.
Look at in the background of that picture. Look at the houses or buildings or whatever. You see them on the shoreline?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think this is not. I think they're dumping this over by South Shore.
Yep.
And then
Yeah,
you're
they're
looking
looking back
across.
towards the mainland. Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking back towards Lunenburg area that way.
Yep.
I think that's what I'm thinking.
I
Dumping on South Side. Yeah, I think so, Kat.
I think you're right, but Zane will probably prove us wrong.
Yeah, he'll probably show me and go, "Now you're backwards. Flip it
Yeah.
over 180 degrees and you got it."
Mhm.
That spoils pile, man. I'd be all into figuring out, you know, going through that spoil. I mean, maybe somebody has, I don't know, but interesting stuff though. But for sure, Blair and Chapel. A couple pictures of those guys, and they were
Yeah.
working on this back in just before the late 1800s was when they were there, right? Because
Yes.
Chapel's son was involved with the Hedden, I think, in some way or right around that time.
1893 to 1900 was the Oak Island Treasure Company.
Yeah, right.
That was formed by Frederick Blair.
Yeah. Look at this, and again, this is many years later, of course, but look at that, all that wood there. You know, you talk about the things that they find all this wood down in the money pit as they're pulling up, you know, hammer grabs and all this kind of stuff. There is a ton of lumber down there. And that's why it's so important for them to date this stuff. Because they might
those are not light. I mean, I don't know how many people have ever done any carpentry work or construction work, but to grab onto one of those planks that he's got laying there in front of him, you just don't grab onto that, put it under your arm, and start walking down the road with it. Like those things are heavy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and they're thick. Look at how thick those things are. I mean, this is
4 inches. Yeah.
a ton of work. And he made a 12 by 24. Hedden did a 12 by 24
Wow.
a shaft going down there. That's incredible. One of the things that was so interesting about Hedden, I thought, was that he didn't go by just that article. He was a researcher. He really started researching into stuff. He also went around the island and he went looking for clues. He had a good idea that there were clues spread around the island that he needed to find, just like we were finding out today with Rick and Marty Lagina and the team. They're looking for clues all over the island, Lot 5, wherever, or the whole island. The whole island is a story that has something to do with this. He was the one, he came down here and he found, what do you see here in this picture that might be of importance? Now, this was the newly constructed.
Oh, the stone triangle.
That's the replica.
Yeah, that's the replica. That's not the original stone triangle. That's the replica that was put in to show basically where it was. It was destroyed by, I think, Robert Dunfield when he was bulldozing all over the place. I think he was the one that destroyed. I don't know. I might be wrong on that. But
I would guess probably it was.
yeah. But this was down in the South Shore, right where the road bends and goes up to the money pit right here. This would be the easternmost road that goes up to the money pit. Isaac's Point being off over on this side over here. But you got that stone triangle right there. Now, this picture here is another one, it's another one of the replica. Looking at it from there, and you can kind of see the stone triangle laid out there with the line in the middle. Now, this one here is the original stone triangle. Now, I wish there was better picture of it showing exactly where it was placed, but I don't think that they have one. They knew pretty much where it was. But the problem with that is they don't know exactly. Some people say it looks like a sextant.
Mm-hmm.
And the sextant has that center line that can be offset to show your direction. And so it had that, and that was pointing at the money pit, apparently. I think that's from an old video. Yeah, I think so. So he was very interested in it. He also found the drilled stones on the island. And so he was correlating all this together with the drilled stones and the stone triangle and coming up an approximate spot where the money pit was in right there. And you see that star. He hired a surveyor to come out. What was that? I didn't get that surveyor's name. Did you have that?
No.
Yeah, I've forgotten. I know there was one. There was a couple of different surveys that were done.
Roper.
Roper survey.
survey. Roper
Yep.
survey. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so again, they were looking at all these different directions, looking at the stone triangle down here, and trying to correlate exactly where everything was located on the island and find out exactly where the money pit was. Really good.
It's kind of cool when you look at that picture, right? Because we think, we look at all the guys like Chris and Corjan and, anybody else that does all their star map diagrams or this angle to that angle, whatever.
Yep.
And we're all thinking this is a new idea to do this stuff, but they were doing it 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were using those same ideas, maybe not based on the same, starting points, but they're using that same idea of using some sort of a navigational tool to determine the angles to figure out where things were.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't have other things that were on the island too, like the Nolan's Cross, and things like that to work off of as well, which I still say is a very important piece of this puzzle. I think Nolan's Cross is, and we talked about that with Corian's new information that he just came out with, and I hope you guys have went and checked out his video that he came out with.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really well done.
Very good. Yeah, very well done.
Yeah.
Good research. This research never stops.
There's no question that Nolan's Cross was important to at least one group of people. Was it important to everybody that's ever been on the island? No, probably not. Because I think with the multi-generational thing, the cross would mean something to one person. And if you didn't know what you're looking for, that cross wouldn't mean anything. You just know it's a great place to go hide stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. If you didn't have any kind of Templar connection and all of that. Yeah. So yeah, it was. Yeah. MacGyver says a great video. I thought it was excellent. Yeah, he has done great work. Gretchen says, yeah, for sure. And then he also is the guy who found this piece of the HO stone. Now he's not the one who blew it up. But he went and looked for it, for some kind of pieces of the stone, and he found it.
Yeah. It was down by the shore, wasn't it? The kids found it and they decided there was treasure under it and they blew it up.
I think this HO stone was probably one of the keys to tell you at least the who of the Oak Island story.
So there's no picture of it before it was blown up. I feel like I've only ever seen the pieces. So it's like they knew, let's get a picture after the fact. Like nobody took a picture before they blew it up. I understand blowing it up because you can't get a crane on the island to lift that thing.
Yeah.
The historical significance or the information contained thereon would not have been important.
Right.
We found something with a bunch of marks on it. Go get some dynamite. We can't move it. Get some dynamite. We'll blow this thing up and see what's underneath it.
Yeah. Yep. They weren't the Laginas and they weren't us. They were
history meant nothing.
History meant nothing. They were all about the treasure. Find the treasure. That's all we're here for.
And if I destroy this, that means no one else is going to find it.
Yep. Sharon, you're correct. It's a tragic loss. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, that makes no sense to me that nobody was like, wait, guys. Real quick. Snap a picture.
Let me get a picture of this.
I want to know where they got the dynamite from.
Yeah.
How'd these young guys get their hands on a bunch of dynamite?
Exactly. I've wondered about that myself. If you take and flip this thing over, you got the OH stone.
Yeah.
And who's to say that we're looking at it in the right perspective?
It could be upside down. It could be sideways. It could be backwards. We don't know.
Because they didn't.
Our eyes automatically go to the letters H and O.
Yes. Yeah. Hedden had saved it, and we don't know where it is now. It's lost again. But I think Hedden had saved it at one point. And there was other pieces of stone here. Now, I don't know if these were HO stone parts or not. They make it seem as though it were. It is. But is that a date down there on the bottom? I don't know. You got Ross. It looks like it says.
Yeah, it's like 1814 or something like that. Or
1864 or 1814
maybe. Yeah.
Hard to see.
And Ross. I think those are more modern carvings.
I think so. Yeah.
They're done with a very sharp implement tool. You can look at the I and the N, things like that, and even the G.
Right. These are
So,
those are not these are not the same person. I don't think that would have done these.
and even if it's part of the HO stone, I mean, there's no reason to believe that you could have found the HO stone and then added something to it later.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's no
Um,
rule that says only one person can carve something into a stone.
Right.
Mhm.
And one of the things I like, not only do I like this whole, the 4 dot cross and then the circle with the hole or dot in the center, but this right here, the H, they did those A's with the crook in the middle,
Hmm.
instead of a straight line going across. And here you've
Yep.
got an H with one in it.
Yep.
So there's a lot here.
I don't know. And the Spanish used that circle with a dot too to mark treasure or mark gold.
Gold. Yep.
Spanish and Portuguese both used it back in
Sun,
1500s.
gold, different. Yeah.
Yep.
It had different meanings in different places.
So is a 4 dot cross unique? Well, it's a Templar, type symbol, but is it unique? I mean, could anybody? I mean, it's not. To me, it's not a symbol that's so hard that somebody else couldn't have come up with it.
Right.
But when you put the three of them together, then you're starting to take the coincidence factor out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big scene. Yeah, interesting. So I don't know. I mean, these letters down here kind of do because you can see these little marks here on the HO stone on the H. You can see these little lines here, on the top.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the ones down here, you see those little lines on these too.
Look how much
On the
sharper that
letters.
is and chiseled in. How
Yeah.
sharp and straight those
This
lines.
I think is done later. This is something
Yeah.
else.
Mm.
But I think this piece may be part of the HO stone.
Oh, the whole thing could be.
You're right. It all could be.
The
True.
whole thing could be. I mean, just because, like I say, if somebody put an H and O at the top doesn't mean somebody else, like graffiti work, didn't come along and lay claim to that same stone and put their own markings on it.
I was here too.
Yep.
Which one are you talking about, Coach? The HO stone? This pic? I think I can actually. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, if that's the one you're talking about.
So the line across on the H, were you saying that would help us determine orientation because typically it would be drawn kind of going with pointing up?
Yes.
And it would
Generally,
be less
it would
likely
be-
to look like this then.
It'd
right?
be
With
crook
the notch
downward,
going
I
down.
think. Is that not correct? Where's our researchers
up.
again?
Because I feel like that crook can tell us orientation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So would that crook go up or down?
Up, I think.
Generally,
Up, I think.
I think up. Yeah, I think it does go up.
But regardless, that shape was known to be a Mason's type mark.
Okay.
Where it should be a straight line, they
usually
would
up.
make that V.
Yeah.
Is that what
Gretchen
the-
says the
that was
crook
the-
is usually pointing up.
Pointing up, yeah, because it would be the supposedly to imitate the compass, the Mason's compass.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the A, it definitely is when it's in an A. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So,
yeah, I don't know.
man, oh, man.
Triple tau. If you go by Jake stuff, triple tau. I don't know. Double tau.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that could be mixed together there that will.
He also found the drilled stones, as we mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
And he also found there's the HO stone when he found it, and he put a little measuring tape there to kind of mark, so you get an idea of how big that piece is, because it's hard to tell otherwise. I think these were these pictures that were in Nolan's museum that he had on the other side of the causeway.
I don't know.
I think they might. I don't know where these pictures came from. They might be from inside the war room.
Yeah, it looks
I
like a
know they
modern
got-
piece of trim there beside it. So
Yeah. Because he had a bunch of pictures in the museum over there. So yeah, he found all these things. He found the stone triangle, the HO stone, the drilled stones, and he found those Mercury bottles in Geordie's Cove area.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was like a pile of them. I don't know, how many he found or where the
No, it just said he found bottles. Yeah,
With mercury in them.
traces of mercury in them. Yeah.
But
And
traces
you would-
of mercury.
You would, I mean, from watching the show, I know you would use Mercury to preserve documents, right? Are there other
That's
uses
one good
for it?
use for it. Yeah.
Yep.
And who came up with that?
That was Bacon.
Bacon.
That
Sir
was one of
Francis Bacon.
Bacon's, which takes you down the Bacon Shakespeare wormhole.
Yep. So, and we've had the people talking about Bacon was originally it leads to believe that Bacon might have been the guy who originally came up with or wrote the Shakespeare all the Shakespeare stuff that it was written by Bacon. And they kind of laid out in that episode why that would have been, because, of some of the things that he said in those stories, would have put him in bad favor with the king and the nobility. And also, you talk about the manuscripts themselves. Shakespeare, and they talked about this in that episode, that Shakespeare, the person, was not somebody who was of that level of aristocrat, level. He was not part of the king's courts and the the higher echelon of the folks. He would not have known.
He wouldn't have had the tools or the resources to write that prolifically.
Yeah. He'd have been guessing
Right?
on a lot of that
He'd have been guessing on a lot of stuff, or the knowledge. I mean, you can't write that much material and not have scribes or whatever to help you with it. So, I mean, we're talking 1603, Bacon was around. We know Champlain was around. Champlain, according to Jake, and Bacon were the same people.
Yep.
You had the Newfoundland Company, 1610. Bacon was sent over to Newfoundland, not up to the Lawrence Meadows area of Newfoundland, but more on the East Coast, St. John's area, which where we know Jake and Bill Smith have been poking around over there looking for something, goodness knows what. It all kind of ties together that he could have very easily have been in that area and had the manpower, the knowledge, and the science to bury something of that significance.
Yep. Yeah, he did. And and I'm going to say too, Jake Roberts and Jake just had last Sunday night, he just had his episode on his podcast that he does with, he did it with Bill Smith. He's working with Bill. Him and Bill are on to something really cool. If you have not seen that episode, you need to go watch it. It's from Sunday night. It's
YouTube Goes to Bacon.
Goes to Bacon. Thank you. I was at a complete brain freeze there. Goes to Bacon on YouTube. Go look it up and watch that episode, because these guys are on to something really, really good. And you need to watch that episode because it'll kind of key you in on what they're working on.
And you'll remember Bill Smith from beyond Oak Island talking about Peter Easton.
Peter Easton, yep.
And
that's just the tip of that.
And now they're starting to tie Easton and Bacon together, and they're really not telling us a whole heck of a lot about it. But I can tell you, it's connected.
Yeah, he is, Zane. Yeah, he certainly is. So is Seth over here too.
Yep.
Oh no, I'm here for the Tom show. This has been a great.
Anyway, there's a connection there. They're working on it. Go watch the podcast that they did on the past Sunday night.
Okay, I follow his YouTube, but I hadn't watched that episode yet.
It's educational and entertaining all at the same time.
Yeah, you got to watch it. Yeah, it was really good. They let a lot of stuff out of the bag on that episode.
Okay, all right,
just enough to set the hook. They haven't.
Yeah, exactly right. Good stuff. But yeah, so he wrote this book in the scientific method. He was all about the scientific method, and as somebody had mentioned, I think it was Dean. I think Dean Barker mentioned this in the chat here. I was just looking back. He also is the one who had done the research on preserving documents in Mercury. So Bacon knew how to do that. So if he had written all those manuscripts, he did all the stuff for Shakespeare and all of his other works, and he wanted to preserve them somewhere, what not better place to do than put them into Mercury and bury them in the ground somewhere deep. And if you find bottles with lots of mercury, and they found parchment,
what are they doing there to begin with, right?
Binding and everything down in the money pit.
Yeah, bottles full of mercury don't float, so they were left there, deposited there. They fell out of something, whatever. Yeah.
Who else? I know Mercury is used for other purposes, but who else would have had Mercury and wanted to use it on Oak Island for something? I don't know.
But anyway, yeah, that's Conception Bay. That's where they, were told to go.
Yep. Now this was, yeah, go ahead, please.
That's Conception Bay in the east coast of Newfoundland, so just a short distance from St. John's. Lawrence Meadows, which where the Norse were, is up at the top left-hand corner, way up the other side of the island. Yeah, up there. So, I mean, the two are not connected in any way, shape, or form. But as you can see from Conception Bay to skip down to Nova Scotia, Mahone Bay.
Easy jump.
It's,
For them.
Yep.
Exactly. So I wrote down some notes from this, but Bacon was the Solicitor General in 1607. And in 1610, he helped form the Newfoundland Company, which had a mission to establish a North American colony at Conception Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So Bacon was already over here, and that's kind of the thing. This ties in with Oak Island, and it also ties in with Jake and Bill's research.
Yeah,
very well.
If you subscribe to the theory that Bacon and Champlain were one and the same person, Champlain was already in the area, in the Bay of Fundy, so he would have had to come down the coast, go around the bottom southwest corner of Nova Scotia, up into the Bay of Fundy in 1603, 1604.
Mm-hmm.
So if the two were one and the same, he already knew how to get here.
Yep. Yeah, Gizzle, that's very true. Mercury was also used to refine gold. So if Oak Island, some people have said Oak Island was nothing more than a gold mine, and people were mining gold out of there.
It's not the right sediment for gold. It's not the right rock structure for gold.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. So that puts Bacon here, in other words, and all that. And Champlain here, is Champlain Bacon, or is Bacon Champlain? Possible.
Or Easton.
And you got Sir Walter Raleigh in there.
And, if you're out there, dial in.
Yeah. So, the ever-present Bacon, Baconian Shakespeare controversy is an interesting angle and could be worth future exploration, which is what Jake's all about, and Bill is right there with him, going along, and their research is tying together really, really well. So, here's the one on doing the Mercury. That's the book on it right there. Piece of that, this was out of H8, that piece of bookbinding that they had taken to Christopher So and Sean Yang, and they had them test it over there, and they came up and said, yes, it was bookbinding, and the bookbinding and the parchment paper were all together into one. So it was definitely some sort of a book of some sort. It was.
And they put it anywhere. They put it anywhere in the 15th to 17th century, so 14 to 1600s.
Yep.
So there you go. You're back in the wheelhouse again.
Yeah, you're right back in the wheelhouse again. So, I mean, that's why, folks, I say this. I've said this so many times about the history of all of this. And if you really want to get down to the who, what, why, when, where, and how of Oak Island, you need to know all these things. And is it possible? And this is something that Tom and I are getting to work on here. This multi-generational use of Oak Island is very, very viable. It's very possible. Because so many people, each one of these researchers, Doug Simmons and Gretchen and everybody, John and all of them together, they all might have parts of this puzzle. They all might be right in some way.
Oh, there's no question these different bodies of people were here. There's absolutely no question about that. Is what the heck did they do when they were here?
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many impressive names attached to Oak Island, from modern times to ancient, what Americans would consider ancient times. When I started watching this show, if you'd have told me that there's an island that Francis Bacon to FDR, people of that, prestige and ranking in society are interested and connected to Oak Island. It's crazy. And that's what's so cool too, like about connecting the history and finding to me, it validates sort of these extraordinary claims of treasure being there, because these sorts of men and groups weren't just messing around on some island across the pond for no reason. Everything they did was very intentional and thought out, I'm sure.
Yep.
It's just so impressive.
It really is.
It's hard to really grasp what the show has already changed for history. And I think for like Tom, for those in the area, like, man, like such an important part of the North American story.
I would have paid a lot more attention in history class if they were teaching this.
Yeah, I agree 100% with both of you on that. Yeah, absolutely. Seth, for sure, because like I said, if somebody would have said all this to me, one thing is, years ago, I wouldn't have cared. Treasure, sure, but history, why would I have cared? Now it's like, and so many people have mentioned that in the chat here, talking about MacGyver said the history is just as valuable as the treasure. Absolutely, for me, it is. They didn't teach us stuff in history class. You're right, they didn't. Now Hedden had passed off. He ran out of funding and everything else, and he ended up, cashing in. He didn't get there, so he cashed it all in, and he got. This is where he got Irwin Hamilton involved. Hamilton kind of took over and on the search from him, and Hamilton was good friends with Franklin D. Roosevelt. And Tom brought up an interesting thing about the shares. What was that you said earlier about the shares?
Well, Roosevelt's been following this thing since 1909, right? And obviously, as the 1930s rolled along, he had probably more pressing things on his mind with the World War, depression and a World War coming up. So, but anyway, I just went back and happened to look up, because I remember one time they're saying, "Oh, everybody makes a big deal. FDR invested. Well, back in let's call it 09. They formed the Oak Island Gold Salvage and Wrecking Company.
Yep.
Okay. They issued 250,000 common shares of this company. Okay. Well, Roosevelt jumped on it and he invested. Any idea how many shares he bought?
I don't know, but that's 250,000 is a lot of shares, right?
Yep. That's a lot of shares. He bought 10.
He bought 10. How much were they?
$1 a piece.
Yeah, nice. Which was worth a lot more.
What the most important thing is, why did he do it?
What did that buy you?
That buys him all the information that someone with 240,000 shares gets.
That's right.
Right? He wanted the information. He didn't want the profit.
Right.
He didn't want the dividends. Right?
Yep.
He said he needed to know what they knew. And the only way to get that information and to stay in on what's going on is to be a shareholder.
Exactly. What better way?
A person with one share has every right and privilege as a person with, 99 shares.
Yeah, exactly.
Was he interested because he knew potentially there's still treasure there? Because I feel like, I do think stuff's been taken, but not all of it, right? Like, what keeps driving people that seem to be initiated into groups back to the island?
And these guys were all Masons.
Right. Yeah, and thanks to Corin and thanks to their book, the Templar or the
Jerusalem Files?
Yes, thank you, Jerusalem Files.
Yep.
They talk about him changing the family crest, the Pentagon kind of establishment. It's interesting. Again, stuff that you think like, what? Now Seth's talking about the Pentagon. What does that have to do with Oak Island? I don't know.
Read the book and you'll know. Yeah.
But
read Corin and Christopher's book.
It all comes back to, if you don't know what you're looking at or looking for, all of this stuff means nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Right? It's just a neat design to a park or a neat design to a monument. Right? Or a neat design to look at the way the streets are laid out. Oh, isn't that cool the way they did that? If you don't have that level of knowledge to know what these guys were up to,
now we're getting into it. Yeah.
Now we're getting into Washington D.C.
Yeah, and the even and France too. You know them.
Yep.
Is it possible that the Ark of the Covenant is actually buried or in a vault somewhere in Washington D.C.? I think it's possible.
Can't rule it out.
Can't rule it out.
This is so fun. This is like a national treasure movie.
It is. It is.
Really?
It
I
is
mean,
an
well, I mean, if you read Scott Clark's book, he talks about that
Yeah, that's
and the similarities
Yeah,
thereof.
Scott's another one involved in this whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep. And James.
See, these guys are all tied together. Robert Smith, you know, Clark. They're worse than the Templars.
Question. All of them.
Ooh, Gretchen said it's possible the Ark is in DC. Okay.
Yep.
Wow,
There you go.
I'm on board now.
Yes, it is. So, what did all these guys have in common besides a want and a desire to find treasure and to see what was down there? Was the Ark of the Covenant ever on Oak Island? Was the menorah ever on Oak Island? What did they all have in common? That symbol right there.
Yep.
Is what they all had in common. Yep. And you take the Freemasonry, dates back to the 17th century Europe. The order was to pursue spiritual enlightenment. Now, if that was something that was, why would you hide a lot of stuff in encryptions and write it into, encryptions in books, encryptions in maps, encryptions possibly in the King James version of the Bible, encryptions of all that? Why? And in literature.
The sonnets, they have, just like the Bible, they have purposeful mistakes as well in Shakespeare's
Exactly.
work.
So why would you hide this stuff? Because you're passing on your information to other people like you, but you got to keep it out of the mainstream I was about to say mainstream media, but yeah, that's kind of what it is, because you would be imprisoned in many cases for your weird beliefs and philosophy.
Right? I was going to say, couldn't some of this knowledge be heretical and get you killed? And
it would get you killed. It would get you banned. It would get you thrown in prison. Bacon was supposedly thrown in prison when never got out. Or did he? He did. I think he did.
Or was it even bacon?
Wasn't even bacon that was in there. Or did he work with the king, who he's actually was friends with?
Bacon supposedly had a twin, right?
Yeah. And what was his name? Sir Walter Raleigh, maybe?
Raleigh.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know who. Tell me.
I was going to answer. I thought Jeff was just pausing for suspense.
Yeah. Mary Queen of Scots. I mean, these people all knew each other, and they all.
And it all goes back to it all goes back to the Templars who started this whole mess.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it does. So, that's what they all had in common. Looky here. Look at this picture here. I grabbed this was also on that episode, but look at this picture.
Ooh.
Where are they at? Where are they? They're underground somewhere doing their rituals, so because it was a secret society.
Just achieving spiritual enlightenment, making better men of themselves. Nothing to see here. Just a fraternal order of brothers.
Someone said that they think it all goes back to the Vikings. Well, the Vikings drew the roadmap, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Vikings and the Norse. Yeah.
They could tell you, but yeah, exactly, Zane. But it'd have to kill you. Or you got to be a high-ranking member. So did it go from the Templars to the Freemasons to the Masons?
Yes.
I don't know.
Throw in the Rosicrucians in there too.
No, as Rick says, we still haven't found that one thing yet.
You still haven't found that one thing yet. Now, you take this all the way forward to now. We talked about Hedden. We talked about what he did, what he built. We talked about the fact that he probably knew where the original money pit was, even though it had been kind of obliterated over the years. So when Rick and Marty Lagina got to the island back in like episode or season 3, one of the things that they figured they needed to do was find the Hedden shaft. Because if they could find the Hedden shaft, they would be in the good proximity of where the money pit was, because supposedly chapel hit the chapel, what they thought was a chapel vault, had gold on the drill bit, bits of gold. They found the parchment paper with the VI written on it and all of that. So the Laginas figured, hey, if we can find the head and shaft, we'll have a better proximity to where the treasure is. And they did. They found it with the help of Dan Hinsky. So they dug down there and they actually found the side of the 24-foot side of the head and shaft in that episode. And so, and their orientation was off. So that helped them figure out where the orient. Now you see those little diagrams on the, when you're looking at the, overlay of the money pit, and you see the head and the chapel shafts. Now they know what the orientations were. So they went and actually found them, and so that gave them a better idea of where they were. So when you see things like this right here, the orientation, they now know what the orientation was. And what I had said earlier about the when Hedden passed everything on to Hamilton, and Hamilton did the Hamilton extension on the Hedden shaft, that is this right here, this little box you see right here. He went down to the bottom 124 feet, and he went further down, but he wasn't near as big. It was much smaller. But he was trying to get down to the chapel shaft, and he didn't get down there either. So there's that. Good stuff. I'm telling you, if you don't have the history, I think that you must have the history. If you really want to get the answers to all of this, you got to include the history in this stuff. I think like many have said, it's just as important as the treasure itself.
Yeah, I want to know who is building roads in the 1200s
in an
island, and like
on some silly island in the 1200s. And who was the big? I mean, Portuguese. What was the Portuguese time frame again, Tom? You're muted.
So around the 1500s.
Okay.
The Portuguese were here late 1400s, early to mid 1500s, and we know that because we have the maps to prove it.
Yep.
It's not guesswork.
So you go back before that. Who's the possible peoples? You go back to Doug and his Vikings and Templars.
You get the Norse, and the Vikings. Yep. And then the Templars, the Basque. From all Portuguese, France, all that whole sort of Western Europe component. Yep. They were all up and down the coast.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Final thoughts on this episode, Tom?
I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the Hedden episode.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I really.
What do you think, Seth? Are you all in on this then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a good tribute. It brings it really helps you realize how not only was the depositing apparently multi-generational, but the hunting of the treasure, where it's so many faces and names and families and people that put their lives into this we what's that saying? Like, you stand on the shoulders of everyone that went before you.
Yep.
And, Hedden is an integral key. And I was excited it was cool to see, not only are the researchers getting a little bit more focused time, but past searchers as well, that, and I think like Rick's so good at articulating the human element to the whole story. And I think that's what I get the most out of these Tales of Oak Island, is bringing more of the humans into it and appreciating all the hard work. And
well said. Yep.
Can't give up. Got to keep going. This is the season.
I mean, like I said, you might the show might be season 25 of the Curse of Oak Island. Alex Lagina and Peter Finetti are now running the show, and whatever. It doesn't matter, because you still need to get those answers. If it takes that damn long, sure, keep going. You gotta. To me, that's part of this treasure mystery, is you have to have that, and in the process, we're understanding who was over in North America way back then. We're getting a better understanding of all that. Christopher Columbus did not discover America.
Mm-hmm. He didn't discover it, but he was involved.
He was a player.
He was a player, and if you talk to someone like Jeff Irving, you'd find out a lot more about Christopher Columbus.
He was a player in this whole thing too.
Yep. Because I mean, Spanish. He had the Spanish Portuguese connection, right?
Yep. Yep. And he had connections in the Templars and everything too. So
Jeff Irving has got a wealth of knowledge on this guy that
he does
that I can't share, but let's just say significant.
Yeah. I'm telling you that everybody that was in, that we know from history and many that we don't even understand had something to do with coming over to America back then, to North America back then. And we need to.
Columbus got the navigation maps from the Viking. I had no doubt in my mind that those maps were passed around. Like I say, you can't put 500 guys on an island and go, shh, nobody tell.
Yeah. And the Zeno brothers. I mean.
And the captains of these ships, the navigators of these ships, were all much more educated than the crew of the ship. But these families, through marriages through different countries, were all connected. You can draw those lines between one family in this country to another family in this country. You can draw the connection. So you don't think they didn't share the maps?
They all have their secret handshake. Oh yeah, I know where the treasure is, and then cool. We'll marry. Yeah, you're right, Tom. This is how it's been preserved, and whether it's through the group or the family.
That's how it was done.
Yeah, it's a crazy. What was he? Oh, what was it? Columbus got the navigational maps from the Vikings. Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. It's and having the Viking and the Templar connection back then that Doug talked about and all this. I mean, there's so much.
Well, you talk about the Vikings and the Norse and their connection to Great Britain and England, right? Great Britain and England had connections to France and Spain.
Yeah,
I mean, someone with a lot more, background, history, and knowledge than I can actually explain how those connections all work. Someone like Gretchen,
absolutely. Yeah.
But they're there.
Yeah, they really are. And I tell you what, kudos to Gretchen and all the researchers that are involved in this mystery, with their portions, and some span bigger areas, but my hat is off to every single one of you for all the work you're doing to figure this thing out, because Tom and I are here just putting together what we're hearing and seeing on the show, and the research that we're doing by talking to you all. I truly appreciate you all, because that's how we're getting our information. So the longest running alliance,
Gretchen makes a good point there. The longest running alliance in the world is between the Portuguese and the English.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Keep in mind too that the research these people are doing, like we're talking old hand script documents, interpretations written in some, language that goodness knows what, it could be in Latin, could be French, could be Gaelic, could be goodness knows what, Norse, Vikings. Someone's got to sit down and interpret all this stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Hundreds and hundreds, thousands of hours.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about the Scottish involvement.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. We'll leave that to James. James can nail that part down. 1632.
1632. Yeah, exactly. So crazy stuff. Well, folks, I hope you have enjoyed this episode, these two shows that we kind of put together for you here tonight. I tell you, it's so much fun, truly, for me. And I know that Tom and Seth feel the same way about this, and Zane and half the folks that are in the chat here with us tonight. It's so much fun to work on this and look into this stuff. I really, truly enjoy it. And it's the reason why we do this podcast, is because Tom and I are learning stuff, not only from the researchers and from what we do, but we're also learning a lot from you all too. And that's why we thank you that's why we do these live, because, we learn stuff every single time. And, we figure, hey, let's share this with as many people as possible, because we're not always right. A lot of times you guys show us where we're wrong, or I'm wrong on stuff, but, it is so much fun, and I really appreciate you all hanging in there. So if you like what we've done here for you tonight, give us a thumbs up on that YouTube channel. We really appreciate that a lot. And tell your friends and stuff about this. If you know anybody, if you have anybody that you can even talk to about this, that don't roll their eyes.
Yeah, some of us are here because, there's not too many people to talk to.
You'd be amazed how many people are out there when they see you show something of Oak Island or whatever. They go, "Oh, you know about Oak Island?"
Yeah. You know, and I
That's
wear,
true.
A
you
lot
know,
of closet Oak Island followers out there, folks, that you don't know about.
there are, and I tell you, when I go out in public, when we went to the RV show or when we went to the festival at Crystal Isles or whatever, the Manatee Festival, I'm always wearing Oak Island something or Skinwalker Ranch or whatever I feel like wearing that day. But I tell you what, I get more people going, "Oh yeah, that's that treasure show. I like watching that show." And then we spark up a conversation about it. So you never know who you're going to run into along the way because they're, like Tom said, a lot of closet watchers of the show.
Yep.
Anyway, that's what we have for you here tonight, folks. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and all of that. I appreciate it very much. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Expedition Bigfoot, episodes 2 and 3. And then in a couple weeks, we're going to do 4 and 5. We're going to keep that going. And we're going to be doing Oak Island episode number 12 next week, right here on the J Free 906 podcast. Oh, you're down to negative 20.
Stay warm, folks. Stay warm. Thanks for the
I think
notes,
it's
Jan.
I think it's 65 here right now. So
You're breaking my heart, Freeman.
I'm not going to tell
thank
you
you,
what it
folks.
is
We'll
here.
catch you next time right here on the J Free 906 podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.